I mean, as you know, I've been doing this my whole life, so I've got years and years of stories, and I don't really talk about it very much, though. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, I've been doing this a darn long time.
How long have you been doing it?
I mean, I started sailing here in Newport Beach when I was 7 years old, and I just, I'm about to turn 61. I've never stopped sailing.
Wow. So is it
very, very. I'm very, very, very fortunate, to have. I don't know, to just have not even known you're following your dream and just get to follow your dream. You know what I mean? Like, it just all kind of fell into place, and it's so natural. But I think innately I've always known that exactly what I wanted to do. So I don't know. Maybe they just worked out perfect.
Is that something your family used to do? Were they big sailors? Like, how did you originally get into it at 7?
Well, it's sort of odd. I remember clearly the very first two times I went sailing. The first time, I don't know how old I was, but I wouldn't have been much older than 4 or 5 years old. On Long Island Sound with my grandfather, and I was absolutely terrified. I can still remember that feeling. If I sit and think about it, how terrified I was when the boat started to heel over. I mean, I think I must have just been screaming like a little baby. So there's that time. And then when my father was a sailor, and I remember going out into Santa Monica Bay in a snipe one time, and I just remember I did not like it. I crawled up in the front of the boat, and that was that. He used to call me a big sissy, and my dad was a man's man, and in the Air Force, and he didn't stand for that kind of pussyfooting around. But then he kept at it with me for some reason. I don't know why he kept at it with me. Maybe because I was not good at any other sports, not really, I mean, 7 or 8 years old, you're playing it, in the park, playing, baseball and basketball, the intramural stuff. And I just wasn't that good at it. He just kept at it with me. And then, I went 1972, I sailed my very first regatta at Bahia Corinthian Yacht Club. And, so you do, when you sail here, or the small boat here we grew up in sailing was called sabots. They're little, I don't know how long they are, 7 or 8 feet long. Mm-hmm. And there's so many kids sailing, you have classes. So you had Sabot C's is the lowest, and B's, and then when you win a C regatta and a B regatta, you get to start sailing A. So I'm sailing my first regatta, so I'm a C. But I won every race. Oh. And I'm kind of like, instead of getting my ass kicked out and getting, like bring it in, easy out, easy, now I found something I'm good at, and it's easy, right? I don't even think about it. So it just sort of started there. I'm like, this is a sport for me.
How old were you at that regatta?
Let's see. So that would have been 72. So I would have been 11 years old, just turned I guess 10 and a half, right?
Okay.
No, 11. If I was born in 61, that was 72. I'd have been 11. And
that's the specific moment where it turned into something more meaningful for you?
Well, I remember it's like, what kid doesn't like winning? And then, yeah. And then winning soundly, right?
Yeah.
It's like, you didn't just win, there's a perfect line on the regatta, 5 first. You can't do any better than that.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean, it was just, I don't know if I call it an epiphany or anything like that, because I was probably way too young to know what that was, but it's like, it was sort of, I just lost the word, it's a really good confidence booster, you to find something you're good at, right?
Yeah. So then, I mean, the reason that we're talking, Keith, is because you just did the Transpac again. And that's kind of the impetus or the moment or the thing that's bringing us together is we have a mutual friend who was talking to me about this.
Yeah, because of the Morgan relationship, which is kind of funny.
Yeah. Yep. So before we get into that, like how did you make, sailing a part of your life from that moment as a child to today where you're now the captain of a boat on the Transpac? Like, how does that, was it part of your living throughout all that time, or was it always just something you were doing in the background? Like, what was your relationship like with sailing from those early years?
Well, so all through high school, I sailed, and then I went down to San Diego State for college, and I sailed here and there. not nearly as much as I had been in the past, but I still kept it up. And then I taught. This is something I wanted to do. I figured I'd always thought about being a teacher. Growing up, that'd be kind of cool. And I thought, well, let's test my skills of teaching. If I can teach people something that is completely 100% natural to me, and that's completely foreign to them, then I could probably figure out how to teach anything. So for a couple of years, I taught sailing while going to school at San Diego State. I taught for the college. I taught the summer programs. It's very interesting. Try to teach something that, because you got to take yourself back, not one, but like levels you don't even know you have in order to try to. It's hard to tell someone about feel, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you tell? You got to feel the boat. Like, what do you mean? I'm like the boat talks to you, like, And like, what do you? And so I found it's interesting. I found with women, they pick it up much quicker than men, and I think it's just because they trust the fact that they have feel. They're not in that negative stigma, like having feelings and being touchy-feely is not a very manly thing to do. So I think that men gravitate away from that, and it's sort of, you're not a man if you're like that. And women don't have that stigma. They believe you. And it was funny. I was just talking about this the other day with someone. What would you do to prove feel? I said, I would go down below on the J24 and lay in the bunk when they're going upwind. I could tell them if they were high or they're low, if the sails were trimmed right or not trimmed right. And I never had to do that with women, but with the guys, I'd do that. They'd be like, how you got mirrors or something? How do you know? Like, no, I can feel the boat. I can tell just by laying on my back down below. I can tell if the boat's trimmed right or not. So,
and that's just.
I guess in that respect.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No. Sorry, I was cutting you off. What were you gonna say?
Well, I guess in that respect, it's probably why I have I excel at this sport, and probably why I enjoy it so much too. Because when the boat's really ripping along, I can feel it. The boat talks to me. So, I'm lucky.
Yeah, that reminds me of a podcast I was listening to recently where they were talking about doctors and how some doctors can they can be very book smart, have all of the information that they need. They were talking about surgeons actually, but then when it comes to actually performing the surgery, they just don't have a surgeon's hands. So it's like, I think that's maybe true across many professions, is like, there's a difference between knowing everything that you need to know about it and then being able to kind of tap into that like subconscious understanding of what you're doing. That's you can't teach that, that's just something you acquire.
I think you'll find, because I've come across a lot of characters that anyone's the top of their game of anything they do, they have that next, it's natural for them, right? Not to say that you can't choke up still, like you can't put a lot of pressure on yourself. And I remember finishing one in Sonata race. We finally beat this boat called Pyewacket on the Magnitude. This guy that I work for right now. This is years ago. And I remember after finishing the race with him, I said to him, I go, I don't even know if it was after that race. If it was after that race, I don't know if it was right after. I said to him, I go, I wonder what it'd be like, if I could handle the pressure standing at home plate when the bases were loaded and it was a ninth out and you needed to hit to win the game. And he turned to me and he goes, Keith, I just watched you will a 80-foot sailboat across the finish line to beat these guys by a couple hundred yards. He goes, I'm pretty sure you could do anything you want to. So, and literally it's funny. I get in like a wind whispering mode and I talk to myself. And when there's no wind now, they just say, Keith, they'll wake me up. Like I'm the guy that gets people out of holes now. So, and I guess that's from growing up here in Newport Beach, where we don't get a lot of wind all the time. We get really good at sailing in light air.
Wow.
But light air, you can make the biggest gains of all. You may not see it, but you can.
Wow. How did you learn that? Was it just a knowledge you acquired from repetitions, or does that just feel like something you know? Go ahead.
I'm just very patient.
Yeah.
And I will not accept defeat, right? Like I set a goal. I'm like, okay, I'm not getting off this helm until 2:00. My shift ends, or we're going 7 knots. Like I'll say this at the beginning of my 4-hour shift. I go, I'll be on this helm until we're going 7, or it's 2:00. I'm determined and patient at the same time, which I guess is sort of an odd mix, isn't it?
Yeah. No, that's
I don't know.
that's something that I was chatting with our mutual friend Linda before doing this podcast, and that was one thing that we were kicking around, was how there's kind of an interesting what's the word, contradiction or balance to what you have to do, where it's like you kind of live this Zen life on the water, being close to nature, listening to the winds, following the winds, but then you're also, a captain. You have to kind of be a little hard edged maybe, and a little instill order into it all.
You're switched on all the time.
Yeah.
Right. Because you're responsible for the boat and the people. So even though it's relaxing, it isn't really relaxing, because you're just always dealing with stuff. That's the thing, that more people should go out in a sailboat in the middle of the ocean. I'd have a little more respect for what's going on the planet, because your planet gets really small in that sailboat, right? But you're still dealing with the same things. You run out of, you got to have electricity, so you got to charge. That means you got to have fuel to charge. You got to be able to have enough water. So, we make water, but what if the water maker goes down? It's just a litany of problems that could arise at any given time. And generally they do. And generally they arise at, 2:00 in the morning. So, we put ourselves through a little bit of hardship, but I don't know. You kind of need it too, I pretty much feel I could do anything, because when if I get myself in a bad situation, I go, well, say I get a flat tire. Well, I go, at least I can get out of the car and walk. You're nothing out there,
Yeah.
So I really try not to think about that too much, but we kind of brought it up. So anyway,
yeah.
Another thing I find very interesting is how much how much differently I enjoy what I do being 60 as opposed to when I was 20.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, I think the biggest thing I've noticed is when I do the deliveries, because they used to be just a means to an ends, a little bit of money, a way to keep yourself relevant to get on the racing crew. That's kind of how you start, right? I'll bring the boat home from Cabo if I can race with you, or you get some miles by. The first time I did a delivery back from Cabo, I didn't do the race down. I was like a sophomore in high school, flew down there and brought a boat home just to, kind of keep yourself relevant. That's what sort of you had to do. There's no pay. You didn't, I got the plane ticket for free and stuff, but that's how you get you get your foot in the door. And now I almost look forward to to be honest, deliveries and races are 50-50 as far as pleasure goes for me now. So, the deliveries, they're so chill. You're not racing. You get, on the first boat I did this summer, I get 5 of my really good friends to go, and that's why Steve got to go. I always like to try to take a buddy, because, it's not racing. So as long as you're good on the sea, I'd love to have you along. There's so much camaraderie that, that it develops in a trip like that. It's just, you make a friend or an enemy for life. But I try not to have any people that I don't like on the boat anymore.
Yeah.
Sometimes on the race stream, you can't help it. And I tell you what, there's no way to get away from somebody you don't like on a 70-foot sailboat.
Yeah, no way.
The best you can hope for is the best you can hope for is you don't on your watch, right? And then you just say hi, bye.
Yeah.
You might see him at a meal or something. But yeah, you want to be tight. You don't want to be, you don't want to have any outliers on a race like that.
Yeah, that was something I was curious about when planning for this. Was there's how much control, or how important is it that there's general positive camaraderie amongst the crew on one of these? Because on the Transpac, how long did it take you? Probably a week or so to finish, right?
Yeah, this is a pretty fast trip for this boat. Just like an hour under 7 days.
Yeah. So you don't want to have someone who could potentially be a source of friction or conflict throughout this trip, because like you said, there's not much getting away from that. So how important is it, when you're putting a crew together, to know or to think about the relationships between crew members beforehand?
Oh, it's a number one for sure. And it's not only personalities, but skills, because you've got to make sure that you have pretty much everything covered on the boat, right? You got to have someone that is good with mechanics. You got to have someone that's good with boat building. You got to have someone that's good with sales. You got to have someone that's good with rigging. And obviously I can do all those things, but I can't do them all myself. I need. So you try to, we always have at least one other sailmaker on the boat with us. I always like to have a guy that knows more. Well, it's not saying much about Kiesels than I do. You got to have someone who's willing to prepare all the meals. People that are willing to clean up. You're a little tribe, right? A very small little tribe, and everyone's got to get along, or it's just not going to work. And there's no time to, there's no mommy to go run to and pout to. It's just, you got to kind of man up and do your. But we weed that all out before you go on a long journey like that. Believe me, it's not. This wouldn't be the first of all. Generally, don't take guys for their first Transpac. Very rarely, and very rarely we take a guy on the boat with you that you haven't already done quite a few miles with. But having said that, we had a guy this summer that did not fit in, and he was a source of. It was a bit of a problem, but you get through.
Yeah.
And he won't go again. He just wouldn't buy into how the boat was supposed to be driven. He had his way of doing it, and he wasn't going to change. And he's a very knowledgeable and well-respected person in the industry, and he didn't feel he had to, so you just kind of get around it.
Yeah.
Ideal? No. But obviously it didn't stop us from doing very well in the race. So you can get by, and it's like everything else. Nothing's ever perfect.
Yeah. But you want to kind of go into it giving yourself the best chance to avoid that of course. Yeah.
Of course.
So before we get to Transpac though, let's just go back to, so you're at San Diego State teaching sailing, which is crazy to me because I went to school in Ohio, and the thought that there'd be a course on sailing is just kind of mind blowing to me. So
it was actually so it started out as a weekend job, and then I taught summer school, and then the last year they said, hey, we need a PE instructor for the school. Like, you're going to be a professor.
No.
So I actually, one of my buddies in the class, he was so pissed at me because I gave him a B, right? And I'm like, dude, I have scruples. You didn't show up to a lot of classes, right? I'm not just going to give you an A, right? He's like, and if I had given him a C, he wouldn't have graduated.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I was just farting with him, but it's just, honestly, he didn't go to all the classes.
Yeah.
Like I said, I have my integrity to keep. I can't just give out A's willy nilly because you're a buddy of mine.
Yeah.
Come on.
I see the seeds of a future captain being sown there.
So then you asked earlier about, how this all evolved into a living. From when I graduated, I did Transpac. It was like my second or third Transpac. Came back, and a guy that I'd sailed with, a gentleman I'd sailed with quite a bit, took his boat up to San Francisco for the Big Boat Series, and brought the boat home back to Newport Beach. When I got home, actually, I think when we were up in San Francisco, he pulled me aside and said, "Hey, Keith, he had a seat on the stock exchange. He was a floor trader on the LA floor." He said, I've been watching you, and I've had a lot of luck with guys that sail and guys that trade stocks. I'd really like for you to come down and work on the floor of the exchange for me.
What?
So I had a degree in business information systems, computer stuff, and so I'm going to completely go away from what I spent 4 years of college trying to do, but big deal. So I took him up on that. This was 1985. The market was just ripping, and for about 6 years, just a floor trader, and trading stocks is a lot like doing a sailboat race.
Yeah, how does that?
The bell goes off. Well, I'll tell you.
Yeah. So
the bell goes off in the morning, right? Just like the starting gun in the race. Well, first of all, you've done all your prep work before the gun, right? You've read the Wall Street Journal. You've looked at your charts. This is what this man taught me, is to be a student of the market, be a student of everything you do in your life. Never leave any stone unturned. It doesn't matter what you're doing. Always be prepared. So for a trader, you had to know, when your earnings were coming out for your stocks. We had at that time we had AT&T, and then this is after they'd broken up. So we had Pac Bell and Southwestern Bell but you got to watch what all the other baby bells are doing. We have savings and loans. You got to know what all the other savings. So anyway, it's just a matter of, being a student, being on top of everything that's going on around you. There's a very valuable lesson I learned, and I did very well during that time. But another very, very valuable lesson he taught me when I worked there was, we have the floor clerks, right? They come around and grab the tickets, and some guys are, you just see people disrespect people that are lower than them on the totem pole in the food chain. Mm-hmm. My boss would always preach. He goes, treat everyone like they're going to be your future boss, because you never ever know. You just never know in this world how things could turn around, and you don't ever want to be that guy that you spit on some guy because he would blow you before, and then just treat everyone the way you would like to be respected, to be treated. And I sort of already knew that, but the way he brought it home was pretty cool, and it's just part of the daily ritual. And like on the sailboat, when I have someone working for me, I would never ask them to do a job I wouldn't go do myself. Mm. So, if I ask a guy to go clean the oil out of the bilge, I want him to know that, I've already done it. If he doesn't do it right, I'll get down there and push him out of the way and show him how to do it right. But you're never above anybody in life. As long as you have that philosophy, I believe you're going to be a lot better off in life. That everyone's equal, mm-hmm. right? Everyone's got something to bring to the table. Always respect people for just being a person, like that's your job. You're never better than anybody else, and don't ever think you are. And, but I think that, that's another valuable lesson that gentleman taught me. And I to this day, I've been very lucky that I had I've had really influential men in my life besides my father because of sailing. Three in particular: a gentleman in Mexico, the gentleman I work for now, and the guy that I went to work for on the stock exchange. Have all, they've been giant mentors in my life, and they're all very wise, and they're older. They grew up in an even better time, I think, than I got to grow up in. So I don't know. I'm very, 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 very blessed to have been around these people.
Yeah. Did you? So you
like when the Mexican.
Go ahead.
Favorite saying that the Mexican gentleman taught me was, Keith, in my house, I always have the last words. Yes, dear.
Solid marriage advice.
Yeah. I love that one.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, I've been with my. Go ahead.
So anyway, from the floor, the reason I left there wasn't because there's two reasons. I got 2 weeks off a year, and I was missing races, and I didn't dig that. My sailing career was going very well as my trading career, and I didn't like the person I was becoming, making money from, not only making a lot of money, but making money from nothing. Like it was just, It was like almost like magic, because I never touched anything. Right? It was all just brains. You don't touch a thing, and all of a sudden you're just making money, and it's not that important to me. It's not what drives me.
Did you notice?
I realized I'll probably never die because.
I was going to ask, did you notice any difference in how you were acting, or was it just more so you got over the act of not touching anything to make money, or what?
No, I was just kind of turning into a dickhead.
Yeah.
It's not what motivates me. I found out, right? Because we grew up here in Southern California, Newport Beach. You're supposed to go to college, get a good job, make a lot of money, and boom, right? That's what you're supposed to do. And so I did what I was supposed to do, and it's just big deal, right? Like, I don't know, just wasn't. That's not. I'd rather be sailing is what it boiled down to the end of the day.
Yeah,
I'd just rather go sailing. The pulls of the ocean, for some reason, for me is very, very, very strong, and having to sit there. And, back in that day, you barely get any race information, but maybe Rich Roberts would have a little blurb in the LA Times in the back section about what was going on in a race. And to have to watch that, not being able to participate was very, very difficult for me. Hmm.
So eventually you got out. You made the switch.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there's a whole nother segue to that, just getting out. But yes, I got out, and so since like 1993, I guess I've been strictly in the marine industry as a boat captain, project manager, whatever. I probably words I can't use on the podcast. So there's a lot of terms for us that are very, very un-PC.
Oh yeah. Well, I don't get too worried about being PC here. So no.
Well, I mean, when you're a kid, you aspire to be a boat nigger, right?
Oh wow, yeah.
That's what we're called BNs, right? Like, and when you're not even that, you're a nig-nog. So one of my nicknames is Nig-Nog.
Wow, that is crazy. That is that terminology like have anything to do with African American culture? We don't have to go too far down this, but
none whatsoever. It's more like you're the I mean, that's the bottom of the totem pole, right on the boat. You're where the buck stops. You're the
yeah.
That it had nothing to do with the other. At least I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think you're just because you work for the owner, right? Like I still have an owner, which is very, I think that's probably more where it came from.
Okay. Wow. The more you know. That's crazy. I never heard that term before.
Yeah. Right. Well, we change it sometimes to I'm an MD, I'm a marine domestic.
Okay.
But so I just started applying my skills. I got to a job on one boat called the It's Okay, and we just did a lot of racing. I'd always make sure the boat was ready. If the boat was kept in Long Beach, if it was in Newport, I'd take it to Newport. If it was blah blah, you start making friends, and pretty soon your guys are like, oh hey, I want to put this. I got this project. You start overseeing projects, going to the boat, being involved from the design stage right through the build stage to the on to racing the boat. I've done that 4 or 5 times with different boats. It's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
It's like having watching a project go from soup to nuts is pretty rewarding for sure.
Yeah, that is very cool, and that's I guess that all leads you to being involved with longer races like the Transpac, right? You're just getting ingrained with these people in the scene and rubbing shoulders with the right people. Eventually, you find yourself on a team or something, or did you put the team together initially? How did you get into things like the Transpac specifically?
Well, the funniest thing is, people say, "Oh, write your goals down," and blah. I've never been that person, but thinking back on it, and my wife is one of these. She's a manifester,
mm-hmm.
right? She throws it out there what she wants and keeps it out there, and it eventually comes true. And I'm like, whatever you do, you want, But I started thinking about, she opens your mind to things, right? And I started thinking, well, maybe I do manifest. I just don't know it, because I remember now being, 7, 8, 9-year-old kids sailing around the bay, and some of the junior instructors were getting ready to go to Hawaii on Transpac, right? I do remember sailing and just like how lucky these guys were, how badly I wanted to do this. Like it was in the back of my mind, it was a dream come true. And, I finally got to do that. And then I remember there's another race, it used to be called the Whitbread Round the World race. And I'm like, if I could ever do that, that'd be the greatest thing that could ever happen. If I could ever do that race. And sure enough, I got to do that race. And then I remember thinking to myself, after I was kind of between boats and stuff, and I'm like, God, it sure be nice if a guy would just come along and buy a 100-foot boat so I could run a 100-foot boat. Sure enough, guy comes along, buys a 100-foot boat, right? So I guess you got to kind of I just don't be careful, but maybe there is something to it, right? Like you throw it out there to the universe, and it will come back to you.
Yeah.
So, there's obviously more to it than that. Like you asked how I got my first Transpac. Well, it started with this gentleman named Dick Ettinger, and he had these boats called. First, he had one called Roller, and then High Roller, and then Free Enterprise. Anyway, that boat that I went down for the very first time, took back from Cabo without doing the race, was when I got introduced to this gentleman. It was his boat. So then fast forward 2 years later, now I'll do the delivery home, but I want to do the race. So I think this is 81 now. I think so. And sure enough, so I get to go. I do the delivery home. Deliveries are always like stuff always goes wrong at the delivery. You learn a lot on deliveries.
Yeah, I imagine.
And the funny thing is, I used to get pretty seasick. Like I couldn't be down below on a boat. So if it wasn't, first of all, if it wasn't for selective memory, I would never have gotten as far as I did, because you get back and you forget about how miserable you were for the first couple of days. And you're like, and you do it again, you're miserable. Like, oh, what am I doing out here? I'm never doing this again. And then then the good days start and you get your sea legs. But I never got to the point where I could be down below much. I couldn't read down below. I couldn't cook. Well, now I don't know what's changed. I could go down and suck diesel out of the engine to get it to start. I could cook anything. It's just gone. I can live down below. It's pretty special.
Nice.
Yeah.
What do you mean by sorry to cut you off? Does suck diesel mean like you're using a hose to pull? Like, what does that mean? Suck diesel to get the engine to start?
Oh, like if you've got an air in the thing and you need to get the thing primed.
Okay.
Sometimes you gotta suck fuel to get. We don't do that anymore because the engines have little pumps on them and stuff. But sometimes you have to, if you have to bleed something, you'll be getting diesel smell down below. That's all it takes, really. If you don't feel well, you're down there, you get hot, and you start getting diesel-y smell and fumes and stuff. It's curtains for most people.
Yeah.
So.
All right.
Anyway, this is a very rambling interview, isn't it?
No, I'm enjoying it. I think it's great. I'm enjoying it. We're making our way through your history and kind of just.
So this guy, the next thing I know, he doesn't want to take the 43-footer to Hawaii. He wants to take something a little faster, so he charters a 50-foot boat, and I get to go. So that was my first Transpac. And to be honest with you, that race scarred me for quite a while. It was very, 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 very windy, and I had a really bad wipeout. And that wipeout sort of haunted me for quite some time. Like at night, I really had a hard time driving because I just sort of like freak out. I can't do this. I can't do this. I was a young guy that had only sailed boats with tillers, and this boat had a wheel, and it gets dark, and you're trying to use the instruments, and there's no horizon because it's so dark and squally and windy. And I don't know. For a long time, I could rip during the day with the wheel, with a tiller, it didn't matter. But night, I was just always apprehensive. It really just scared the living daylights out of me. It was no fun, to be honest with you. Like I'd count the nights, like, oh shit, we got 3 nights left. It means I got 3 hours of dark driving I got to get through.
What does wipeout mean? Just to kind of clear that up.
Imagine going down the ski hill with all your goggle, your hat, your skis, your gloves, and you just eat shit and you just leave a trail behind you of everything, right?
Oh,
that's kind of what a wipeout's like. I mean, imagine this 100-foot sailboat going along at just a little under 30 knots with huge amounts of sail area, and you lay that thing sideways, and it just you're lucky if something doesn't break or someone doesn't fall overboard. That's a good wipeout.
Wow.
But I've seen some good ones in my day. So I'm like, what am I going to do? I know I can sail these boats. So I don't know how I figured it out one day. But when I was driving during the day, I'm like, you don't even look at the instruments during the day. Like I don't. I look at the horizon. I look at the bow. I kind of glance at them because it's nice to know how fast you're going, how windy it is. But you don't look at the instruments. And at night, I noticed I was just staring at the instruments because you couldn't see anything else. So I just learned, even though I couldn't see the horizon, well, sometimes you can, depends on the moon or whatever, but just drive during the night like you drive during the day, right? And go back to your feel. And boom, then all of a sudden now driving at night's easy too. So we had one race we were doing down the coast with another gentleman I worked here in New York, or here in Newport for years and years, the guy that got the 100-foot boat, doing a race from San Francisco down to Santa Barbara. And it's pretty windy in the afternoon. So I go, I'm going to go get a little rest. And it keeps getting windier and windier. It's not dark yet. And one of the guys said, hey, do you want me to go get Keith? And And then he says to the guy, he goes, no. Keith drives at night.
Oh, wow. How far you've come. That's
So,
cool.
Yeah. It's like I said, I don't think if I ever made these steps that I'd still be doing this. So the steps were there to take, because you just, if I continue to get as seasick as I used to, it wouldn't be nearly as enjoyable as it is now.
Mm.
And then just, being a go-to guy, like when the shit hits the fan, that you're the guy they go to, it's like, it's pretty cool. It's quite an honor.
Does shit hit the fan on these longer trips like the Transpac? I mean, like you said, it's a week out there. You're kind of in, I'm sure weather to a point is pretty unpredictable, or can be unpredictable out there. What kind of crazy things have happened on these races to you?
Well, less and less, because we have, our weather forecasting is so, how I've watched weather forecasting evolve over my lifetime is phenomenal. We used to go out and we used to just go like, I remember you didn't know, right? You're just like, okay. I mean, I left Hawaii one time because I was out of money. Like, well, how do you know it's time to go? Well, got no more money. Got to go. And now I can tell you I can tell 10 days out if I'm going to be leaving or not. So that's changed. So you have a lot less of an excuse for the shit hit the fan now than you used to.
Mm.
And I think that's not, so it's different when you're racing. It hits the fan because you're pushing hard, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to win. Or, things can go wrong because you're not properly prepared. That's where, that's kind of where I come in. I've got to leave no stone unturned before we leave on the race. And if we do, so you have to have a pretty good idea of what's most likely to fail. And you got to make sure you have your spares, your backups for that. And, so, this is where age and experience really pays off, because you've done it so many times. Like this last summer, well, starting with the race to PV last year, I'm like, there's got to be something wrong here, because I'm leaving the boat at 5 o'clock on the day before race starts. Usually you're up till midnight. You got shit everywhere. Stuff's not working still. And I don't know. It just doesn't happen anymore. I guarantee you one thing is not that my time management has gotten better, because it hasn't. So I think it's just, you kind of know what to do, and you just get better at delegating, better at having, not trying to do everything yourself. And, I guess just experience, really.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So let's see what's happened recently.
Yeah. Let's get a story.
Well, the best one was, 2 Transpacs ago, we're racing the Rio 100 and cruising along the course, 1 o'clock in the morning, pitch black. And I just finally laid down my bunk to get some sleep. I don't even stand a watch in this boat, because we sail with like 17 people, and basically I just was the housekeeper. I'd cook, I'd charge, I'd make water. It's quite a task keeping up with 17 guys. So I finally laid down, and all of a sudden, just the loudest boom you've ever heard in your life, and the boat just shudders, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's one loud. So there's a boom, and then a second, and then just a kabang. And I don't know. We don't know what we hit. I'm guessing it was some sort of log, because I found wood in the kelp cutter in the keel. Anyway, that boat has 2 rudders, one each side of the boat, as opposed to one in the middle. Well, the rudder that was driving the boat, because as you're heeled over, the other rudder's basically out of the water.
Mm.
It took a 6-inch solid piece of carbon shaft and just snapped it. So now I go back to the back of the boat where the rudders are. It's its own little, there's a watertight bulkhead in front of it. Got to climb through this little door. And this rudder's back there just, we're still under sail. We're still ripping along. And this rudder's back there snapped, trying to rip a big hole in the bottom of the boat. And funny, my first thought was, shit, there goes my first thought was the competition. I thought to myself, there goes the first finish. God damn it. Then I thought, fuck, stop the boat. Like the boat's got to stop right now, and we're gonna have to figure out how to get this rudder out of the boat. So we got this spinnaker down. We tacked over. So now that that hole's not sitting in the water, but it's still jarring around a lot. We can't heel over enough to get the rudder out of the water. So it's still trying to rip a bigger hole in the bottom of the boat.
Are you in open sea?
So,
how far from a coast are you?
Oh yeah, we're halfway to Hawaii.
Oh wow, yeah, that's pretty open.
So we figure out a way. We got a plan. We're going to push this rudder out, and then we're going to plug this hole, right? Mm-hmm. And it's the diameter of the hole is probably about 18 inches around, enough for the lower bearing. So it's a pretty good sized hole in the bottom of the boat. And so I'm back there with he's sort of my helper, the guy that helped, my second to me. Mm-hmm. And so one of us has to be back there when the rudder gets pushed out to plug the hole. And I'm like, I'll do it. He goes, no, I'm going to do it. I go, how come? He goes, because I'm about a foot shorter than you are and about 15 years younger. So I couldn't argue with that because it's a hard hold. If something went wrong, to be able to get to that hatch and get it shut and out, he would have been about 5 or 10 seconds faster than me, which when water's coming in at a pretty good rate, it's a lot.
Yeah.
So I let him do it. Anyway, we popped that rudder out. We quickly stuffed a sleeping bag in the hole, and then we had manufactured a plate to go over the top of that, and so we got that. An hour later, we had that all sealed up, and then we tacked the boat back and headed on our way to Hawaii. And we actually still ended up winning the race.
What?
So, yeah, we had to sail about 700 more miles on starboard, where we were really limited on our ability to sail because we only had the one rudder that would keep popping out of the water. We have a whole emergency rudder setup that we could put in.
But isn't there a bunch of water now breached the boat that's going to slow you down, or is it or do you pump it out or something?
Pumped it all. We managed to not get that much water there, and I have a big pump that runs back in that. I had a big pump for that boat because water leaks. Drip. It's funny how a drip in a boat really adds up 24/7. Mm-hmm. So that was one of my jobs. Another reason I didn't have a watch because I was always I'm Elgin Baylor going around with the roaming bilge pumps getting water out of the boat. So, our navigator calculated that if we sail at this speed, the way we're sailing, without putting the other rudder in, we'll get to this dry point in like 3.5 days or 2, whatever days it was. He goes, and we should be about 25 miles ahead of the boat behind us still.
Wow.
And then we jibe onto port tack, and then we have the rudder in the water like we should. And we're a regular boat again. So sure enough, I think those guys got to within 17 miles of us. We jibed, and I think we ended up beating them by about 100 miles or something because we're so much faster. So you just got to be resourceful, right? We didn't have everything we needed there, but we had to cut up a tank to make a plate to fit over the top of the hole to glue down and screw down, and we took the emergency tiller and we ratchet strapped it from the deck down onto the top of this thing, and you just got to be what do they say? What is it? Ingenuity is necessity is the mother of invention, or something like that.
Yep.
You get by. You'd be surprised what you can come up with when you have to.
How do you stay cool in those moments? Like I obviously my experience with the sea is not even a fraction of what yours is. So I'm sure there's a lot going into just what you've already seen throughout your life that's helping you stay calm in the moment. But even still, I just imagine that being such a moment where you almost just want to call the coast and be like, hey, send help. How do you rally the troops and stay calm yourself to get through something like that?
Weirdest thing is that I've been teaching lately at these Safety at Sea seminars, and this question got asked exactly to me a couple weeks ago, and I realized that I go the other way in panic. I bet you my heartbeat slows down and time slows down, and I don't know. I just don't panic when you really should be running around like a chicken with your head cut off. I seem to go the other way. It's interesting because I don't know how much you know about our trip home. Did you talk to Steve at all?
I did not talk to Steve, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, we had a pretty hairy moment coming home. And I was the one that found it. And now I have Steve. Do you know Steve at all?
No, I have never met him. I know of him, but
well, he's a bit of a worrier. Like, he was really worried about this trip. You know, like, Keith, you're not putting me into a situation. I go, Steve, you're one of my very best friends. I'm not taking you out and putting you in danger. You know, I wouldn't put you into a situation I didn't think you would be able to handle.
Mm.
So here we are, about 700 miles from Hawaii. Once again, 1 o'clock in the morning.
Oh man.
Nothing ever happens during the day. It's unbelievable. And we have a rudder. The rudder's coming out of the bottom of the boat. Like, I went back there and I'm like, holy shit, you know. And I don't want to panic Steve, right? Because he does, you know, I know he's a panicker. All my other guys have a lot of experience, but poor Steve. So he's up already because he can see me back there, what's going on, and I'm running around and thinking about getting on the radio and calling Pan and what's going on. And I didn't want to say anything, so I just said to him, I go, nothing good, you know. That's all I said. And I had, so there's 6 of us. So I had Steve sitting in the companionway relaying information. Ernie was up driving, and then there were 4 of us down below. And the 4 of us never yelled, it was completely calm. And we got the rudder back up of the boat by a miracle and got this thing, you know, we went from shit, we're sinking, shit, if we get this thing working, we got to turn around and go back to Hawaii, to, oh, hey, everything's fine, right? Now, even the guys all agreed. Like, you know, we had a little meeting afterwards, like, you know, I think we're as good as we were before. We know what failed, and we fixed it. If we turn around, we got to go back into 25 knots. And if this is bad, that would be a bad place to have it break again. Whereas if we keep motoring through the high and something goes wrong, if we can get picked up, you know, in flat water, not in a, you know, so, you know, lots of reasons. And we just, you know, we had a general little meeting, and we just said, Keith, I think we're making the right decision. Let's carry on. So back to your thing. I don't know. I'm not a panicker, apparently. I would have never thought it, but I'm not a panicker.
Do you find... Go ahead.
Well, we were doing a race. We were doing the Sydney Hobart race. First time in the same 100-foot sailboat. And it's about midnight, and I'm just going around the boat, do a check. You know, it's a 100-foot boat. There's a lot of things to check. But I finally, at the very end of my check, I'm up in the bow of the flashlight. And there is, I don't know how many, 500, 600 gallons of water up in the bow. Like, it looks like, I went up there with the flashlight, and there's water. It's a pretty, you know, it's blowing like 25, so the boat's sloshing all around. There's basically breaking waves in the bow. It looks like the wedge. There's sea foam, you know, I can barely even see up there because there's so much. Anyway, I'm like,
wow.
I go walking back to the boat to get the long hose that it's got a big gusher pump that you manually pump, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And the same guy that was in the back of the boat with me, Jeff, he goes, what's going on? I go, we're sinking. he jokes to this day about that story. He's like, he goes, it's like you didn't even, it's like it was no big deal. I go, well, what am I going to do? Start running around panicking, people going, we're sinking, you know? So I grab that hose and I start walking back to the bow of the boat. And the hose, so this is it's not a brand new boat. We've just done an extensive refit on it. So it's basically a brand new boat. And we made it from 70 feet to 100 feet. Well, I go to walk this inch diameter hose. It's got quite a bit of, you know, it will bail a lot of water out. Well, it stops about 15 feet shy where I need to get to. Holy shit, what the hell am I going to do? Well, first I had to find where the water was coming from. And I found out it plugged the hole. It was a drip, drip, drip from the deck. It was more than a drip, 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 but it was just a hole in the deck that a fitting went through. And we just never seen that kind of water on the boat before. And so we didn't know. It was just lack of experience on a sailboat.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to have to start doing this one bucket at a time. So I'm just trying to handle this myself, guys. We're still racing, right? So half the crew's asleep, half the crew's racing the boat. We're all pretty busy. So I get a bucket. I'm going to pick this bucket up and walk back to the galley sink. Well, it takes, you know, it's like 30 seconds round trip. I can't get a full bucket because the boat's bouncing all over like a fucking Bronco. I'll lose half the water on the way back to the sink. Then I realize as I'm sitting there doing this, I'm like, you know what? Right around this corner, I have the shower. and in that shower there's a sump, and in that sump there's a pump. So basically I got two other guys. We just did a bucket brigade to that sump pump, and within about an hour and a half, we had the boat sailing again. You know, it went from shit. I thought we were going to turn the boat and put it up on the beach because we're sinking, because we're beating up right along the Australian southern, the southeastern Australian coast.
Okay.
And to no problem at all. We solved the problem. So panic basically will do you no good. So there's no reason to panic, right? I mean, it won't do you any good.
Do you find that character trait of yourself to be true in other high stress situations? Because I'm sure there's an element of your years of experience, your ability to, or your preparations that you do before all your trips that are contributing to your cool, calm, and collectedness in these moments. But I wonder do you see the same kind of response from yourself in other high stress environments that are maybe on land?
I don't know, because what do you do that's like that, really?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, get in a car crash, but if you're, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I hate to say this, probably the next situation that I'd ever faced here would be a big earthquake, right? Mm-hmm. And then people are running around, that it's where you fall in the leadership role when that sort of shit happens too, right? It's, like I stress because what I teach at the Safety at Sea is disaster preparedness. And the number one thing I tell people is you got to, first of all, obviously you have to stay calm, but you have to have someone you listen to. You have to have a leader, someone. You can't have five people spouting off ideas. There has to be it's not a chain of command, really, because we're all equals. So there has to be a serious chain of respect, right? Mm-hmm. And I get that on the boat. Whereas maybe I wouldn't, if in the community, I wouldn't have that same sort of command, because you wouldn't even already be starting from a perspective of not superiority, but a perspective of greater knowledge, right?
Right.
So I don't know how that would cross over.
Yeah.
I do know that I'm not a panicker.
Yeah, clearly. So yeah, we've mentioned the Transpac a couple of times here. It's not a race I was super familiar with before talking to Linda about the trip. And I imagine there's probably some people listening who are not familiar with it either. Would you mind just giving kind of the 30,000 foot overview of what the Transpac is, and then maybe explaining what it means specifically to you? We can go into that after, actually. Let's just maybe the 30,000 foot overview of what it is.
I'm not a big historian, but I know the race. We had our 50th. It's a biennial race, so we only race every other summer. Mm-hmm. Been going on. I think it started in the 30s. I know it missed a couple of years because of World War II, and I think that's the only interruption there's ever been in the race. So it's a race that starts in Los Angeles. We start generally right on the ocean, right off. We used to be marine land, but right off Palos Verdes. Only one mark of the course, and that's the west end of Catalina. And then you're free to go. Another, 2,200 miles across the Pacific to beautiful Diamond Head. And throughout the sailing world is known as just one of the greatest races, just because the last half of the trip is just beautiful trade wind sailing, downwind, and 15 to 25 knots of breeze. They generally try to arrange the race around a full moon, because it just does make for better sailing, especially for, the full moon out in the middle of the ocean, basically it's not dark. I mean, there's shadows because the air is so clear. And, by the time you get to the trades, it's not 100% cloud cover. You get just big puffy, squall clouds going by, and, so it blots the moon out every once in a while, but you always have shadows. And, and every day the race gets, the first night can be quite cool, just because everyone thinks, it's the middle of summer. But if you're kind of going upwind in, the waters off California in the summertime, it's still only, once you get a couple hundred miles offshore, the water's still only, 60, 65 degrees. Mm-hmm. So the first nights really can be nasty, wet and cold. You've got a lot of spray on the deck, because you have to hang, you're pretty close to on the wind. People think, Hawaii south of us, but it really isn't. It's more west than anything else. And basically the whole race is predicated around where you go in to the ridge of the high pressure system. That's the dominant feature of the race.
So all about how you navigate that particular feature.
90% of that race is the first 30% of the race. It's where, however you there. So it's all about where that high pressure system is. The Great Pacific High that sits out there in the summer. What shape it is, how it's moving, what it's doing. The whole race is predicated around that. Because the higher you can sail, which means the straighter you can sail to Hawaii, the fewer miles you're going to sail. And 60 miles. It doesn't sound like much in a 2,200 mile race, but you're talking about vehicles that travel, a fast boat's going an average of 20 knots. Most boats are averaging more like, between 8 and 12 knots. So that's a significant chunk of distance when you look at it in those speeds. So the closer you can sail to the high, or the closer you can sail straight brings you closer to the high, but generally the closer you are to the middle of the high, the less wind there is. So there's a delicate balance between distance sailed and wind pressures you're trying to find. And then all of a sudden you'll have to realize what the high is going to be, not only where the high is in 2 days from now, we got to start thinking about where the high is 7 days from now when we're going to finish. Is the high going to move north? Do we need to be on the upper side of the course to get the big lift and drive in and come on one wind, or is the high going to drop down and we're going to end up finishing on, in say a 55 wind direction as opposed to a 90 wind direction? So it's very, very tactical, and we're always monitoring the weather.
Who's plotting the course? Is that your job to be navigator, or is there someone?
No, we have a navigator, but so that's a very ambiguous term these days because there's really very little navigation. I mean, we know where we are. I know where if I could pull my phone out in the middle of the ocean to get my Latin lawn, that's all changed. So what we're doing more is we now have the ability, and I don't like it, but we have the ability to plot our competition from only a 4-hour delay. We get new weather 4 times a day, and when you get new weather, you can get up to 4 different models of weather. The Euro, the GFS, the NAM. There's all these supercomputers out pumping out weather, and very well, they never are in complete alignment. So then you're sitting there making generalizations about, over the last couple of days, we've noticed the NAM's been closer. This is what the NAM says. So, but our competition's over here. So it's a very strategic race in that standpoint. And then also driving on shifts. If it gets windy, you got to change sails. It's very complex. That's why it never gets old.
Yeah.
Right? You never get it right. It's just every time you come off the race course, you're like, well, I did pretty good, but we messed this up. You're like, so I think that's probably the biggest attraction for me is that you never get it. You never nail it. Right. You're like, geez, Mother Nature will throw something at you or something will break. It's just very, very challenging.
Yeah. Keith, why did you say you don't like the 4-hour delay weather planning?
Well, no, it's not the weather planning. It's where our competition is.
Okay.
In the old days, you used to get their positions once a day. Everyone would report in on the single sideband at 6 o'clock in the morning to race headquarters, and then you'd be down there plotting everyone's position, and that's it. And in your whole day, you either had a great day or a bad day. So if you had a bad day, you had to shake it off and forget about it and try to sail. So the next day, your next report in 24 hours is going to be really good. Now, I don't know. I mean, it's not that I don't like it. It's just different. And I kind of like that to be secretive for 24 hours. And obviously, unless you were inside of somebody. But that it doesn't take very much to be out of sight of someone in the middle of the ocean. It's like 7 or 8 miles and you can't see them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's good from a safety standpoint. And they do it because everyone can follow us on land, right?
Yeah.
That's really what it's all about. The Yellow Brick Tracker started as a safety, or the Yellow Brick is one of the trackers that we use 90% of the time, but it's more about the friends and family and fans can be involved in the thing, right? They can go and every 4 hours get an update of where we are, how fast we're going. So, but it can also cause some problems. Like our tracker went out in a race not too long ago, and everyone thought we didn't know because we don't really necessarily track ourselves, right? and also people thought they're calling like, what happened to Peligroso? What happened to Peligroso? Did they sink? They're gone. Like, when did they drop out? So it can go, if you don't know, too. Anyway.
Yeah. Is there a certain nostalgia in the sailing community for days before computers? Like, because I know golf is a sport I play, and that their professional tour is one that does a pretty good job of like trying to keep things to the original game and not letting tech get too involved. Is there a certain sense, a longing for how things used to be in the sailing community, or has everyone pretty much embraced the advances that tech has brought to the sport?
Yeah, I think that's one of the neat things about sailing is it's always on the cutting edge, and it's mainly due to the trickle down that happens in our sport from the highest levels, right? The biggest trickle down we used to get was from the America's Cup, because that was the pinnacle of match racing in the sport. And when you're match racing, you're looking for, tenths of knots here and there, and so these guys would. The biggest trickle down probably for us is rigging and sails and building materials, right? I mean, and that's where the biggest advances have come in. And you're never going to stop that. I mean, that still happens in golf, right? I mean, look at it's the biggest change probably is our balls and clubs, right? I mean, because materials have changed so much, and it's the same in sports. It's building materials that have pushed the sport so far. I mean, there's only so much. Even the best computers on the boat, they're still telling me what happened. My brain is still faster than the fastest computer on the boat. Now, where the computer does help us is with trends and things like that. But because we graph stuff, right? And you can definitely see trends. Trends are I used to follow trends when I traded stocks. Trends are everywhere in the world. People just don't realize it. And graphing stuff is very important. And so what the computer allows us to do is grab a bunch of data and go back and look at it. And now we can go back and analyze a race. We can see, oh, well, maybe we had too much main sheet on because we had 4 degrees of rudder that we probably don't need to carry. Blah blah. We can go back and overanalyze things to death, but we have that ability now. And it's not. For me, it's not a big deal because I've always have been and always will be a seat of the pants sailor. Like, I drive a lot of guys nuts. Like, my navigator's like, how do you know? It's like, but it's good because we play the devil's advocate to each other, right? He's a numbers guy and I'm a feel guy, so we get along really, really well.
Yeah, you're able to find truth in the middle somewhere, or see when the other person has a good point, and
yeah, and I can't put it to science. Like, when I used to come back in and talk to the sail designers when I worked for North and I was selling sails and going out sailing, I don't know all this technical aspects of taking all this, but I could tell him how the boat felt, how the sail looked, what we were doing at the time, and then he can take that and put it in his language however he wants to. So in some cases I'm probably a detriment, but in other cases I'm a benefit. So my lack of scientific knowledge probably it balances out for sure.
Yeah,
I would say.
Do you ever feel like I don't know if guilt or shame is the right word, but like a desire to take more time to learn the technical side? Because I know one thing that happens with me in my line of work is I realize I'm really good at one aspect of my job, but I'm lacking in the other. And it's kind of this battle of like, do I just double down on the thing I'm good at and, work with someone who's good at the other thing? Or do I try to expand my knowledge to include the other thing? Like, how do you deal with that within yourself?
I think it's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of both, right? You can't just, it's like your body, right? If you build one muscle too much, it's going to weaken another muscle, right? It doesn't mean that you can't have dominant muscles. I think you always need dominant traits, but the more you can learn about anything, except to the point where they say a little bit of knowledge is bad. Always keep that in mind, I suppose. Like, just because you know something doesn't mean you should open your mouth and say something about it. Always just always be listening and learning, and always be trying to just strengthen your weaknesses, but don't let them ever, like, don't ever, it's like, well, I'll never get this. Well, then move on, right? Don't dwell on it. Like, you can't be everything to everybody. you do have to play to your strengths for sure.
So I guess to kind of wrap this up, I've really been enjoying this chat, Keith, for sure. And I appreciate you taking the time to discuss your love of sailing in the water. It's been great. But to wrap it,
Well, I appreciate it. I'm sorry. It's very, it's very disjointed, but anyway.
No, it's not. I've enjoyed it. I think it's got a good flow to it.
Okay.
But yeah, I guess, what do you have that you're looking forward to, and how do you, what do you have that you're looking forward to? What's coming up?
This guy that I work for right now he's an older gentleman, and he just loves to sail. So we are sailing. It's a dream come true. We're just sailing as much as we can. It's a little slow right now. This is normally a slow time, and I'm actually taking my time to enjoy it. I haven't been going to the boat as much, and just getting ready for a busy season, because next year we have a race to Puerto Vallarta, and then we do a week of buoy racing down in Banderas Bay in Puerto Vallarta, which is it's always a regatta called Mex Work. It's a hoot, warm weather, or warm air, warm water, 15 knots of breeze every day.
Nice.
It's just champagne sailing. And then we come back up here. So I got another delivery. That's not really that pleasant of a delivery up the Baja coast, but we make it. And do some racing around here again in Southern California. And then this summer there's a race to Hawaii called Pat Cup, which starts in San Francisco, finishes in Kaneohe. We didn't get to get in. They take 75 boats, and we were entered last time. That was canceled by COVID. We thought our entry rolled over. Anyway, when you assume what happens.
Yeah.
So we're going to do something pretty cool. We're going to go do a race from Victoria, Canada, BC, to Maui. I've done that race once before, the Vic Maui race. But the boss just, he's got a boat. He's getting old. He wants to race it. He loves racing in Hawaii. So we're going to take the boat up to BC and do that race this summer. And I think it starts July 8th.
Nice.
So another nice round tripper to Hawaii this summer. And, he's right now, he says his health's good enough. So we're still primed for Transpac next time.
Cool.
So I've got a good couple years ahead of me, and I'm pretty darn happy.
Yeah. How many days per year are you spending on the water?
Oh, you mean actually out sailing?
Yeah.
Or
yeah.
I'm on the water. I'm on the water most every day, because the boat sits in the water. Out sailing, not as much as I used to. When I worked for North Sails, I was out on the water an average of 5 days a week.
Oh, wow.
With customer race. Yeah. Now I think, I'm probably sailing. I probably sail 10 days out of the month.
Okay.
There's months like over the summer I raced to Hawaii. That was 7 days in the water. Then I brought the boat home. That was 12 days. And then I flew back and brought another boat home. That was 15 straight days. So in 40 days, I spent 30 days at sea or something, or I don't know, but a lot of days. So that,
wow.
that ups your average quite a bit.
Yeah. So it's safe to say maybe a third of the year spent just sailing.
Yeah, probably pretty close to a third of the year out on the water.
Wow. That's so cool. How much of that though is high stress, super focused, laser driven sailing versus kind of the more champagne sailing that you mentioned before?
No, I never, the laser focus comes so naturally. I just don't even think about it, other than that I'm really, really tired at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But on the water, I don't know at all. It doesn't matter. The difference is on the racing, you're switched on, you're trimming the sails all the time. You're making sure the guy's driving right. All that stuff. When you're delivering, you just get to enjoy the ocean more. You sit there, you don't have to talk to a bunch of guys. You just get to reflect on your own. There's music playing, you have happy hour. They couldn't be more diametrically opposed other than that you're on the ocean. And like I said, that's the thing that's changed for me, is how much I enjoy the delivery now, just the being part of it, and I think it probably has to do with the fact that we get away so much. Like, there's no cell phone. My motto I came up with this last trip was, there's no bad news, only booze. So
nice.
This day and age, it's, you're just inundated with nothing but with nothing but trouble, like, oh, what are the Democrats doing now? Oh, COVID, oh, the global, it's like, you probably don't know how toxic that is, right? Until you don't have it. And then you're like, oh my God, life is pretty simple still. I got to get up, I got to eat, I got to sleep, I got to go to the bathroom, and I got to forge on to the mainland. It's like how it's crazy how simply priorities in your life can change, and I just enjoy it.
Oh yeah. Well, that seems like a great place to end. I think we stuck the landing there. So call it there. Is there, I guess if someone's still listening and intrigued, they might be interested to know if maybe they can get on the water. Do you do lessons or anything currently? Do you have any recommendations?
No, that's the hardest thing. I get this question a lot. You talk about an old boy school to break into, it's tough, but I mean, there are the place, if you're in, if you're local Southern California and Orange County, one of the best places is that OCC crew base down there on Coast Highway. They have an amazing sailing and seamanship program. So if someone's really interested in there in the area, and anywhere, I imagine that you have, we're not limited to where the listeners are, but anywhere near the water or lake, you can always find someone will teach you how to sail for sure. And if you have any interest, just Google it. You'll find something. There's these places in any harbor. There's places that will give sailing lessons. So that'd be my best advice.
Cool. Well, thanks, Keith, again. I really appreciate it. This was a lot of fun for me. So it's a nice change of pace from the normal stuff I do.
Yeah. If you ever want to reach out, I'm available. Just send me an email. You got another topic you want to talk about? I'm always down.
Cool. Yeah, I really appreciate that. I'll definitely keep that in mind.
Okay, Eric. Thank you very much.
Bye, Keith. Have a good day.
Talk to you later. Thanks. Okay, you too. Bye-bye.